Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
ScreamingBox Technology and Business Rundown.
Welcome, everyone, to the ScreamingBox Technology and Business Rundown podcast. I'm your host, Dave Erickson, and today we have David Levai and Iman Kaur, who are going to be talking about transitioning into coding and learning different coding platforms. So I guess we'll start out. Maybe Iman, give yourself a little background as to how you decided to transition and where you're transitioning from.
Yeah, so I have a background in physics. I have undergrad with a major physics, and I did master's in physics as well. So while I was doing my thesis work for my master's, I got to learn like a few languages for my project, and that's how I was introduced to the coding. And I got so fascinated, and I was so interested in just coding itself. So I transitioned from core physics to coding right now, and then I started learning. I self-taught myself like a few languages like C++. I started from there. Then I self-taught myself like JavaScript, React Native, and I started doing like small projects like for my family, like, small websites and stuff. So that's how, and I honestly feel like it's a very creative field where I can like put my ideas, and I actually see those ideas in the real life too. So which is kind of like very interesting for me.
Great. And David, how did your transitioning journey start?
Cool to hear that, Iman, you transitioned from physics. It's much more interesting stuff. I actually started out as a web designer. I mean, I liked how great websites look like, and I really hated how bad websites looked like when I was kind of 12 to 13 or something like this. So I really started to design and create some websites, how I imagine how they're gonna look like. And I started using Photoshop. I've created websites with Photoshop, which is just kind of an interesting thing to laugh at right now. It's really a no-go in 2021, but it was a thing in 2010 or 2008 or something like this. So I've experimented with stuff like this. Then later I wanted to make those websites alive, and then I started using WordPress, started using and customizing some WordPress themes. Then I got into coding eventually with HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript, jQuery, and PHP stuff for WordPress. Then I quickly transitioned away. I worked as a kind of freelancer while I was still in high school. And after a couple of WordPress websites, I learned how to build web applications, mobile apps. First with native languages. I still coded Android in Eclipse instead of Android Studio in somewhere around 2012. So it was interesting to learn all those. And at that time, it wasn't as easy as today. I mean, at least as far as I can remember, it was harder to find really great stuff about this. It wasn't the usual thing to build up a blog, to build up a whole website on learning how to code. So I really has to dig down deep into Google's documentation about Android. And at that time, that was a really technical documentation. There wasn't an easy getting started, like in 10 minutes with developing a mobile app and stuff like this in 2010. But right now, it's actually pretty awesome to learn how to code. I just had my little brother to learn to get started in web development. So he can learn completely free everything what he needs to develop websites or web apps or practically anything He started with freecodecamp.org. It's I think they are in the business since, I don't know, the early 2010s. And their mission is to get everyone free education about how to code. They have pretty easy to follow lessons. They've got some projects. There's the option to donate to them, but to start and to work with, you don't have to pay anything. There's some kind of boot camps, like front-end masters have an online boot camp, still in front-end development, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It's an easy to follow stuff. It's more like a recording of in-person workshops. But it's fascinating how learning to code went from from how I did 12 years ago.
I think you're right. So my younger brother, he's just like 21. So he is actually like doing electronics and computers. So he hasn't got like he doesn't got like any like languages kind of like courses yet. So he has an issue like the way he learns, he cannot like read the article or like the course material. So he has to like listen to it. So there are like 100 million YouTube videos. He would just like put one on. He would just like listen to it like all day. And that's how he started coding. So it's super weird that he can actually code just by listening to that. So yeah, so I think you're right. Like maybe in back in like early 2000, it'll be like really, really difficult. But exactly the way I learned. So I was a research student. I was a research assistant. So my basic nature is to learn things just by myself. It's a kind of like bad and a good thing, but like I self-taught like myself my whole life, I believe. Like I always like self-learn stuff. It's like the better way to do it. And I would have like discussion with someone like about it like later once I'm done with something. So I think yeah, I actually learned like everything literally free of cost. Like I just found material from the Google and I would just start like doing stuff. And they actually have like some, so we have like a library in San Jose. So there are like few people who code together. Like before this COVID, we would just go like once a week, and then like random people would show up in the library, and we would just like code together. And someone is working on some project, we would just help each other out, and like do our own stuff. So yeah, we have like a lot of like meetups and stuff too.
Oh,
Actually, that's how I got introduced with the. So there are like a lot of languages, right? CSS, HTML, Python, which is like completely different field. So I don't know if you guys are aware. So there's like a meetup app too, where you can actually, especially in the bigger cities, like the metro areas. So you can actually they organize like few like basic kind of like workshops where you can actually code for like a couple of hours, and you can see if you feel like it or not. Like like my brother doesn't like JavaScript. He's a more of a Python guy. So he went to that. So I think in that way you can actually figure things out without taking the course or paying for it or something. And there are like people over there which organize these workshops. I think they are like, I don't think they are from the particular company. I think they're just people like us who are just like, organizing these things. And they can actually let you know, like, okay, like I transitioned from physics. So I'm like, okay, my first question is, am I gonna get a job with that? Or like, what kind of job I will get? Where should I apply? These kind of questions, right? So they would actually like answer your questions because they're like people like us. They're from everywhere, right? Especially in the San Francisco, people are from all over the world. So I think that's how I got to know too. Okay, this is somewhere I can go. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. I want to go for it. So I think that was pretty helpful too.
yeah, I think for learning any kind of new stuff, the community is really community gives you the power of accountability. If you have some friends and you're talking about, I want to build something. If you want to really build something by transitioning to coding, you don't just want to learn code to get a better job. It's a motivational force because you have something why you want to learn code, and you have an idea of an application or a website or something. But I think motivation in itself is kind of a myth. So it's not how, I mean, some people tend to think that how it works is I have to have a motivation to start working on something, but I I try to imagine something completely different from this. I think that motivation actually comes from building out something. So to start out with something, I don't need motivation. I need self-discipline. But when I have self-discipline and start to work on something, I will have the motivation if I see that it works well. So in a community, if you have friends who has this motivation and who has this discipline to work on stuff, it really works well. You have accountability partners. You can give ourselves some kind of tasks, or you can help out each other. Community really has a power when you're start to experiment with something. You find great people to work with. You find new people to network with.
Yeah, and those networks, I mean, as you're learning coding and working with people in these type of groups, whether it's a meetups group or a Facebook group or whatever, as people develop over a period of time, they'll help connect you. One of the questions that I have is, learning or self-learning something. I've done that with some technologies as well. The real issue is that once you've learned them and you've kind of done a few experiments and a few projects, the real quest of saying, this is what I love doing, I want to be a developer. At that point, you need to shift also into getting the experience and doing projects and being part of projects. And so I guess my question is, how have you started any of that, or what advice do you have to kind of get the experience once you've learned something or taught yourself and had one or two projects? How do you focus, or where would you want to go to get more experience, or what type of experience?
I think how I started was I started connecting with people because I actually got my certification during COVID. So it was like there was no go. I couldn't go anywhere. But people were doing that networking call, like Dave, how I met you over that particular conference, right? So that 1 minute networking, I feel like that was the best thing I ever had. Because when you go to an event by yourself, like in a conference, you barely have the chance. Sometimes you feel like, I don't know, shy, maybe you should talk or should not talk. I think with this kind of like 1 minute networking calls, which you get in the conference, especially in the virtual ones, people are like forceful to talk to each other and like have a very quality level of conversation because they actually give you like literally 3 minutes and you're just gonna drop out after that. So it's like basically you are like presenting your idea in like literally 3 minutes and you have to give that other person the chance to talk back. I feel like that's the best thing. Like I got really better with that. Like I can actually like, say everything in like literally in less than 2 minutes, and that person can reply too. And I think if that person is really interested, like Dave, how I connect to you, or like, okay, shoot me this email, this is my email, contact me there. And I feel like that was a very good way to connect with people. I actually got connected with few of the people on that particular conference. Like I met few people who were working for startup companies. They haven't launched yet, but yeah, I think that was the best way to start working. I mean, you may not get paid, but that's okay. The projects are so amazing, some of them, that you just want to learn. So I think that was my whole purpose, to find people, because I wanted to learn on like do real projects which are actually working, instead of like like small things or like practice and stuff. So I would say, like, first of all, like find like startup companies, or join small like conferences. And I feel like everything's like virtual, so this is kind of like advantage at the same time too. um, yeah, I feel like that's the best way to connect. I mean, they would offer you internship, and most of the time, if you present yourself well, I think they do offer internship, especially the smaller companies, because they do need like more people who are willing to learn and put like the whole, give the full investment to them. So I think it's like benefit on both sides because they don't have the money yet, or they're raising funds. So yeah, that's how I started it.
I think for a developer, there are two kind of ways to get experience, and two kind of different experiences. One is for hard skills, and the other one is for soft skills. And when you're learning for yourself, it's pretty easy to get on hard skills because there are countless of tutorials on the internet to learn any kind of hard skill you want. I mean, if you just open up YouTube and search for any word, concat with tutorial, and you can learn it. But you cannot really learn soft skills through the internet. You really has to have a team to learn how to teamwork. You need a team even to learn how GitHub works, how Git or version control systems works in a team. You have to learn how to talk with your boss or how to talk with your employee and stuff like this. And I always say that even if someone wants to work for themselves, it's a great experience to learn how to work in a team by working, as you said, Iman, as an intern or working as a junior software developer. And I always say that I don't want to work with FAANG companies, but I think everyone has to have this experience. And I won't say that it really has to be a FAANG company. It could be any other big or multinational company too. But if you work with any kind of big company, after that, I think it's a total different experience to work with a small company. It's totally different. You still has the same position. You can be the same junior software developer or any kind of stuff like this, but working with a company with, I don't know, 20 to 50 people with one or two teams is totally different than working in a big company. I'm not sure if Dave, Iman, any of you worked with bigger companies before.
So I actually liked working with the small companies. So it's like a family. We were literally like 10, 12 people. It was a brand new company. And like you said, you were a web designer. So while we were like building the website, so we were giving our feedbacks. Okay, this looks great. This look great. Okay, I'll help you with the Figma. So I actually learned Figma because I was helping that person out. So I did learn a lot of stuff. Like my so the person who owns the company. So we would like, she's like, okay, I'm reaching out for funds to these people. She would talk about it because like a family, we're a small team. She's gonna talk about every single thing. So I think I do understand that part too, because at one point, like I want to have my own company, I want to do something on my own. So like while you see people working from scratch and learning every single thing, like even though that's not your ideal job or something, but I feel like it makes you much better. Like you can do your own job like in a much better way, and you can give feedback about other things too. And yeah, I feel like it's great. Yeah, it was like great in every like management, because she was an MBA person. I learned a lot of business strategies from her, like how to do and whom to reach out, how to reach out. That's like a bigger question too, and about the designing and stuff too. And yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I think this is the key. What you said is when you're working with a big company, you'll be a better software engineer. You'll be a better engineer in general if you work with either Google, Facebook, Amazon, etc. But if you're working on a small team, you will be a better product builder, because you have to learn a little bit of Figma. You have to learn a little bit of software testing. You have to learn how to deploy something. You have to learn how to, I don't know, build backend if you have to fix some bug, and you'll be generally a better product developer instead of just a better engineer. It depends on what they want to achieve in the long run.
Obviously, startups and small companies, they don't have enough resources. So there's a real opportunity to learn and grow. I've worked for big multinationals like Xerox and Qualcomm, and most of my businesses that I've started and run have all been small or medium businesses. I personally enjoy that communication and that feeling of family and allowing people to be able to grow and try different things. That to me is exciting. Large corporations, if you're a developer for Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, you gain something different. You usually become much better at the hard skills, and they push you kind of technology-wise to be more organized and to code in a way that allows others to integrate into that code much easier. Whereas with smaller companies, they're not as concerned with that. They're just concerned with, hey, I need to make this thing work, make it work, and do whatever you need to do to make it work. And so that gives a very different opportunity. And that's why, for a developer to become what I would consider a senior level developer, they've had to work for both small companies and large companies and have enough of that experience. Some developers can get that experience, in 5 years because they've worked 5 different jobs, because they wanted to try different things. And sometimes coding jobs, you get what you can out of it, and after a year, you're doing the same thing over and over again, and you want a different opportunity to learn and grow. So a coder moving, having 5 different jobs in 5 years, that's not an issue, but it gives them a lot of seniority in the sense that they've had a lot of experience. Although a developer who's stayed at one company for 5 years, they get experience, but they may not get the variety of experience, and that's also different. And so, I don't know, as a young coder or as somebody starting out in coding, how interesting is it? Are you looking more for stability in a longer term job, or do you like the thrill of going from job to job and learning new things? I know freelancers love having new opportunities all the time, but it's different for everyone, right?
Yeah, I think what is great in bigger corporations and why it is great for starting developers is because they can learn so much about development. One, they really can get experience with that specific tech stack or that specific field of study. And the other thing is they can build up their emergency fund. I mean, money-wise, they can build up their emergency fund. They can start to invest, because obviously these these corporations, I think in the Silicon Valley, for juniors, they can pay all up to 100K per year for juniors. And so they can really build up their emergency fund, start invest and stuff like this. So they spend there 2 or even 3 years. They have they have enough money to start experience with anything they want. They can start working on startups. They can start working with startups. They can do practically anything because they don't have the pressure on themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, I think like about me, like if you talk about stability, I actually like challenging situations more because then I get like I push myself to learn more things, like connect with more things. That's how I am like, and my like I have like masters in physics, so that was really tough to like get the thesis done and everything. It was like my mom always had the thing, why didn't you do doctorate? So I feel like she's like, oh, you're just a wastage of physics. Why would you do masters? If you want to be a software engineer, you should have done that. And they were very criticized about it earlier, but now I feel like it's actually a good thing because let's say if I'm working for some company which has a science background, I think that's what Silicon Valley is all about, science and like coding. So I feel like now I have this kind of background, so I actually connect with more people and actually like have a better understanding of the product or whatever they are selling because I do know the core physics. So I feel like it's a very plus point for me, and that's how I answer these questions too. Like whenever someone asks me why did you like drop out like from like doctorate, or why would you like it's do masters, you could have done undergrad in like computer science or something. Or I feel like it makes me a much more diverse person and more valuable, I would say, and more challenging too, like in work in any
Yeah.
situation, because I can.
You can also understand if the software is working with hardware, how the hardware
Mhm.
functions, and you have kind of an
Exactly.
understanding of the software firmware hardware relationship. So that expands you out to do development beyond just software development. And I think that's also interesting. I come from the hardware industry, so my background is more electronic hardware. So I like products, but I also saw that more and more products are basically hardware platforms running software versus just a simple hardware product. And now with the integration of AI and robotics and a lot of the self learning programming that can happen, the hardware is just becoming a very powerful platform to run that software on.
Mhm. And I feel like in general too, let's say like you're talking about the hardware and like how actually things work. So like being like from the physics background, I actually have a better understanding. So there's nothing in this like industry which I don't understand. Like if you're working on something completely different, I have no idea that this thing even exists. If you would just tell me a little bit about it, I'm gonna understand the whole thing, you know. So I think that's like really really helpful. So it's not like I am just a coder which is working on this particular thing with this team, and I have no idea what else is going on. I would always have an idea, okay, what is going on, what they are actually working on, what the other teams are, working on, their understanding. And I feel like that's actually make you a better team person as well. You understand like what the other person is doing instead of like, some people are like, oh, this is easy, you can do that, So I feel like that's like more respectable too. Like you become more respectable. Like I always thought designing is super easy, I'm not gonna lie. But once I started doing it, it's so annoying sometimes because the small stuff you just gotta put in there, it's not gonna appear by
Yeah.
itself. So even the small button, you gotta like make it happen. So I have like lot more respect for those people. Now I respect every single person and their work. So yeah.
Well, David, just out of curiosity, how many different kind of technologies or coding platforms have you learned, and is there ones that you like over other ones? Do you have a favorite or?
Yeah, I think I'm the best person to answer this because I really like to experiment with with tools, with languages, with coding or anything in general. I mean, if we just count project management platforms, I tried out at least 8 different ones in the last 2 years. So, speaking of coding, I started with JavaScript, and I think I'm gonna stuck with JavaScript until the end. Obviously, I moved over to TypeScript for well, not just type safety reasons. I feel that it's better to write TypeScript code than JavaScript, but mostly JavaScript. I've had some experience with some PHP stuff that was mostly for WordPress reasons, but it was a long time ago. I don't think that I can even write a line of PHP now. I've experimented with Python for a year. I've developed native iOS and Android applications. That was a long time ago. So Android, it was with Java 6 and the Android SDK. I don't know whichever one. And for iOS, it was still with some kind of Objective-C, but still in the process of transitioning to Swift. Now I'm experimenting with Swift UI in my free time and with Rust. Rust is a pretty fascinating language which is just started to get some attention in the last 2 years. It's kind of similar to C, but it's a much more modern way than working with C or C++. So it's an interesting stuff. I'm not sure, Iman, did you try Rust out before?
No, I haven't. I was actually about to ask you, could you just let me know like more about it? Like I don't know much about it.
Yeah, I've just go ahead, Dave.
What kind of languages have you learned? What's the ones that you found were interesting for you?
Honestly, I only started from C++. I learned C like in the past, like then I started with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React Native, and that's all. That's all I learned so far. And I might stick with the JavaScript too.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah,
like React? Was React easy for you to learn and apply?
It's actually pretty easy, but I feel like the most of the projects I have done, like I have done in like JavaScript. I'm definitely like I want to work more on React for sure. But I feel like JavaScript is more vast. But yeah, like I've been working on JavaScript more. I feel like I'm more comfortable with, so I'm just keep on working or making it like my strong skills. But I would definitely like to learn more about like I have learned React Native. It's not that difficult to learn. Is not a learning is not a difficult part. The difficult part is to apply that when it comes to real projects, when you're working on something or when you're actually writing code. So I have not done like much projects on it. So yeah, I'm not very confident in it.
Yeah, it's it's funny that I'm working with React and React Native since 2016, and I've just forgot to mention these previously, but these are my main tools since the last 5 years. I think they are working pretty well, and they have a pretty easy learning curve right now, much easier than, for example, Angular. And React Native, as you said, it's the same too. It's easy to get started with it. It's easy to get involved in it.
Yeah.
When you're moving on to production, there are some kind of stuff where you can where you have to deep dive into the native platforms, build processes and build mechanics and stuff like this. Then just knowing React and React Native won't be enough. But I think that's why, as you said, JavaScript is extremely versatile. That's why what makes it pretty interesting. You can run JavaScript on mobile. You can run JavaScript in the browser. You can run JS on the desktop. You can run it even on microcontrollers now with TensorFlow, I think.
Yeah, I think my brother had like exact same question. Is like how easy it is. His first one, how easy it is. I'm like, it's super easy to learn, just to learn the course material. But once you have like a lot of terms, you just gotta once you start applying it, then that's a real challenge. Like how much you're gonna remember, what mistakes you're gonna do. So I feel like I always like tell him too, whenever even if you're learning a small thing, write a code like right away. Like coding is like literally practice all day, all night. Whenever you get time, like just do coding, whatever. Do like some personal projects, like put your own like stuff, like blog or something, like start doing something. If you just keep on like reading, it's just gonna you just won't get anywhere for
I
sure.
think that what makes you remember what you learn. If you have some personal project to build with it, that's what I'm doing right now with my brother. He's got this idea of a recipe application. It's nothing new on the horizon. There's lots of it on the market, but he just wants something which is his own. He did it. He made it. That's how he learns. And we started out by first he's just building static sites with HTML, just an example recipe. Then he's gonna build a menu, a navigation bar to switch between recipes and the list of recipes and details. Then later he's gonna build it from static sites to dynamically with React. Then later he can build an authentication for it, and after authentication he can build out that anyone can add a new recipe, then build a database behind it and stuff like this. So this is how it really makes you remember what you've learned if you build something.
And I remember like when my brother first time coded. So earlier, I think he did coding like with someone else, like in school somewhere. So it's like, how I'm gonna make a website. So I'm like, okay, start from here. When he actually clicked that link to open, he's like, oh my God, this is actually website. I'm like, yeah, look at. So I think that motivates him. Like he's gonna do much, much better. Like what? So he's like using the same website, using the same. He's like building things, making it better. He started from hi, my name is this. Now he's doing a lot more stuff with that. So I think that's what like he gets very happy when he see that kind of stuff. So I feel like the real projects are like the most important. Doesn't matter if they're real personal.
Start a Facebook community, brothers and sisters learning to code.
Yeah. Actually, I was telling him he just started like literally a couple of weeks back. He got to stay more consistent. I would love to work with him, but siblings are siblings, so it's gonna come. And he's a younger one. He's like super spoiled. It's gonna come all on me. Like you have to like build something that I'm gonna work with you.
Well, that's one of the things that David you mentioned is that there besides learning the language, there's the whole infrastructure of the internet and native apps and how important is it that it's not just you learn a language, but you have to gain experience with all the other components. And if somebody were starting out to learn coding, in addition to the coding language, what other areas should they be looking at or studying in order to make it so they can put it all together?
Mm-hmm. I think what everyone has to know is how the internet works exactly, because that's what makes it much more understandable for everyone what happens when you type in google.com and how does the web page renders, how it came alive, what's happening. That's one thing everyone has to learn. I mean, that should be some kind of common knowledge.
I think that's the first thing they should learn. That's the very first thing you can understand. Yeah.
Yeah, learning the basics of a domain host and a web host and some basic things.
How packages are moving through TCP/IP connections and stuff like this. I think everyone has to know this who wants to develop websites or well, practically anything, because if you want to develop if you want to develop anything, there's a pretty much big chance that it's going to need a server to client connection.
Yeah, you're right. I agree with that. That's actually right.
Then one last question. You're a coder, you're learning some coding, you're working on some personal projects. Testing. How do you find people, or how do you test your products to make sure that what you've actually done is functioning 100%? Or, do you get a friend who knows coding to test it with you? What's some advice? I'm sure you've done projects where you sit there and you debug and debug and debug until eventually you get everything straightened out. Anything you guys learned about testing or having someone else help you with that?
I think in my house, that's my dad. He criticized me for every single thing. I mean, he loves me. He would defend me and everyone else. But so my dad basically studies everything. If I would ask, hey dad, I need help with the coding, he's gonna learn the whole JavaScript from me just to have that conversation. He's a very good and he loves to discuss things. I would love to put him on podcast sometimes. He loves to talk. He can talk about any single thing in the whole world, politics to whatever you can ask for. Mm-hmm. So I think that's my dad. I always trust him because he never sugarcoat. He gives me very clean feedback. Okay, this is what's wrong. You got to work on it. This is that. So I think about that. I haven't done the actual testing, actual testing. So I'm pretty new in that. So I don't know. David, do you want to talk about it?
Well, I try to test it for myself. Because I've been through many projects as a lead dev or team lead, I get a grasp on how to test the applications and usually what are those features which where there's some edge cases or where there can something be messed up. So I try to test it for myself. I'm asking some friends to test it out, but usually they're pointing out stuff what I really don't want to know about and they don't want to hear about, so it just bothers me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We've had an interesting conversation about this, and hopefully any of the developers or people who are looking at becoming coders will find this podcast interesting. We'll put links in below if you wish to contact us or David or Iman to ask other questions. Anyways, thank you very much, and look forward to our next podcast in a month. Well, thank you very much for taking this journey with us. Join us for our next exciting exploration of technology and business on the first week of every month and for our next podcast. Please subscribe, like, and follow us on whichever platform you are listening or watching us on. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and please let us know any subjects, topics, or anything else you'd like us to discuss in the next podcast on the comment sections or in a Twitter DM. Till next month, please stay happy and healthy.